In the modern world, we are surrounded by food options. Crispy fries, sweet desserts, bold spices, and an endless variety of snacks from around the globe. But let's wind the clock back. Way back. To the medieval period, roughly between the 5th and 15th centuries. If you lived back then, food wasn't just dull. It was often a daily struggle. And tonight, we're going to slowly explore why food, quite simply, sucked in medieval times. Let's begin with the basics. In the early medieval world, most people were peasants. And if you were a peasant, your daily meals were centered around one word: grain. Barley, rye, maybe oats if you were lucky. Wheat was expensive. The rich had it. You? Not likely. Your main meal would probably be pottage. What's pottage? It was a sort of thick stew made from boiled grains, water, maybe a few vegetables, and, if the stars aligned, a small piece of meat. Maybe a bone for flavor. It simmered over a fire all day. Every day. And the next day, you'd do it again. Flavor? Not much. Spices were rare. Salt was expensive. If you lived near the sea or in a wealthier village, you might get some. Otherwise, most food was bland, gray, and repetitive. Now, let's talk about bread. Bread was life. But not the kind you might imagine. No crusty artisan loaves or warm baguettes here. Medieval bread was often made from coarse flour. It could be dense, chewy, even gritty. That's because it was sometimes ground with stones that left tiny pieces of grit in the flour. Yes, people in the Middle Ages literally wore down their teeth by eating bread. And what about meat? Sounds like a treat, right? Well, meat was mostly for the upper classes. Nobles had access to fresh game, boar, venison, even swan. They roasted it in great halls and drank wine from goblets. But the common folk? Maybe salted pork once in a while. Maybe. Fish was more common, especially for religious reasons. The church dictated days when eating meat was forbidden, so fish stepped in. Herring. Cod. Sometimes dried or salted to preserve it. Fresh fish was a luxury unless you lived near water. And speaking of preservation, there were no refrigerators. No freezers. Food went bad quickly. If you had meat, you salted it, smoked it, or dried it. If you had vegetables, you pickled them. Spoiled food was common, and people didn't fully understand bacteria. If something smelled off, you just boiled it longer. Or added more vinegar. Now, let's move to vegetables. Were they common? Yes. Exciting? Not really. Turnips, onions, leeks, cabbage, beans. These were staples. But potatoes? Nope. Tomatoes? Not yet. Corn? Not even in the picture. Those were all New World crops, arriving in Europe much later. Fruits were seasonal and scarce. Apples were often sour. Berries, if found, were wild. Sometimes people dried fruits to save them. Other times, they were cooked into pies or porridges. Drinks. Water was often unsafe. It could carry disease. So, people drank ale. Weak, home-brewed ale. Not the strong stuff we think of today. It was low in alcohol and used as a safer alternative to water. Nobles drank wine, but only if they could afford it or lived in wine-producing regions. Let's not forget dairy. Milk, when available, came from goats or cows. But without refrigeration, it spoiled fast. So, people made cheese. Hard cheese lasted longer. Butter too, but mostly in northern regions. Southern Europe preferred oil. Now, imagine sitting down to eat. No forks. Not yet. People used spoons, knives, or their hands. Bread might double as a plate, called a trencher. After the meal, the used trencher might be given to the poor. Or fed to dogs. Or tossed out. Hygiene. Well, medieval kitchens were smoky, cluttered, and full of pests. Rats, flies, and mold were common. People didn't wash hands with soap before eating. And food was often cooked over open flames, absorbing ash and smoke. Did people enjoy meals? Sure. When they could. Feasts were rare, and most meals were functional. Fuel for the body, not a pleasure. Nobles fared better. They had spices brought by trade: pepper, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg. They had access to sugar, though it was a luxury. But even for them, the food lacked variety by modern standards. Too much salt, too much preservation, and digestion was a common complaint. Interestingly, medieval physicians believed food affected your humors, the body's balance of fluids. Hot, cold, wet, and dry. Foods were prescribed not by taste, but by what balance they might restore. For instance, cold and moist lettuce might be avoided in winter, as it could throw off your body's balance. Sound odd? That was science back then. Oh, and let's not forget fasting. The church demanded many fast days, over 100 per year. No meat. Sometimes no dairy. Just fish, grains, and vegetables. For many, this was no different from normal. For nobles, it was a chore. By today's standards, the medieval diet lacked variety, nutrients, and safety. Malnutrition was common. So were food shortages and famine. One bad harvest could mean starvation. There were no grocery stores. No backup plans. Still, people survived. They adapted. They shared meals in simple ways. Bread was broken together. Pottage was stirred by many hands. And when feasts happened, at weddings, harvests, or holy days, people remembered them for years. So the next time you bite into a spicy taco, a fresh salad, or even just toast with jam, remember that once, not too long ago, food was dull, dangerous, and scarce. But it brought people together all the same. And that is why food sucked in medieval times. Good night. Sleep well. And dream of hot stew, coarse bread, and smoky halls filled with the smell of boiled cabbage. You're safe now. There are no turnips here.